Gopijana Vallabha Jai Girivardhari Jai Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Jai Jashodanandana Jai Braja Janaranjana Jai Braja Janaranjana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jai Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gauda Bhakta Binda Krishna Jai Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Rama Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Haraye Namah Krishna Yadhavaya Namaha Gopal Govinda Dam Shri Madhusudan Haraye Namah Krishna Yadhavaya Namaha Gopal Govinda Dam Shri Madhusudan Haribo 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 Gauda Haribo Gauda Haribo Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jayam Vishnu Padpanam Hangsha Porivrajaka Sushamalchala Abhay Charanarabina Bhakti Vedanta Shami Shri Prabhupada ki ISKCON Protestant Acharya Shri Prabhupada ki Ananta Kori Vaishnava Vrindaki, Shamaveta Gaur Bhakta Vrindaki, Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Navadip Mayapur Dham ki, Shishinitai Gaur Rishita Nata Brahman. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Vandeyaham Sri Guru, Siddhitapadakamalam Sri Gurun, Vaishnavamscha, Sri Rupam, Shavadutatam, Sahaganatam, Tang Shajivam, Shaddaitam, Shavadutam, Parijanusaitam, Krishna Chaitanya Devam. Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Mantra Guru Jotashika Guru Ganta Charane Age Korea Bandhan Bancha Kopatu Vishta Kripashan Reva Chapoditanam Pamneva Vaishnava Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Shamade Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaudavani Prajani Nirvisheshashanavali Pashtata Deshatarane Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Dharma Projita Kaitava Atra Panamanya Namatsanama Satam Atra Vastu Shivaram Tapatrai Unmananam Srimad Bhagavatam Mahamunikute King Vipara Ishvara Saddhariri Avaruddhate Atra Kriti Bishtu Takshanat. bhadrāśvam ketumālaṁ ca bhāratam cottarān kurūn kimpuruṣa-ādīni varṣāṇi vijitya jagṛhe balim bhadrāśvam ketumālaṁ ca bhāratam cottarān kurūn kimpuruṣa-ādīni varṣāṇi vijitya jagṛhe balim. Please chant. Vaishnavis. Bhadrāśvam, Bhadrāśva, ketumālam, ketumāla, also cha, also bhāratam, bharat, cha, and uttarān, the northern countries, kurūn, the kingdom of the Kuru dynasty, kimpuruṣa-ādīni, a country beyond the northern side of the Himalayas, varṣāṇi, parts of the earth, planet, vijitya, conquering, jagṛhe, exacted, balim, strength. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki. Mahārāja Parīkṣit then conquered all parts of the earthly planet, Bhadrāśva, Ketumāla, Bhārata, the northern Kuru, King Purusha, etc., and extracted tributes from their respective rulers. Purport: Bhadrāśva is a tract of land near Meru Parvata, and it extends from Gandha-mādana Parvata to the saltwater ocean. There is a description of this Varsha in the Mahabharata. Bhīṣma-parva, 7th chapter, text 14 to 18. The description was narrated by Sanjaya to Dhritarashtra. We this Gitu Badesh, Sanjaya Ruvacha, Gitu Badesh, Sanjaya Ruvacha. Dhritarashtra, actually, Dhritarashtra was the disciple of Vyasadeva, Dhritarashtra. And Vyasadeva had such potency, Brahminico tejas, that Trikalagya, he could see the future, he could see the past, he could see all that was happening at present, Vyasmuni. And he had such potency that he was able to actually bestow that mystic power upon anyone. So he suggested to Dhritarashtra that he will bestow upon him, Vyas, the vision to be able, because Dhritarashtra was blind, Dhritarashtra was in Hastinapur, Battle of Kurukshetra, that was in Kurukshetra, some distance away. So Vyas Muni, he was prepared to bestow upon Dhritarashtra the ability to see everything that was going on in the battlefield. And Dhritarashtra was actually not inclined to accept that benediction, because Bhīṣma, in the great assembly of warriors in a princely order, in the court of the Kuru dynasty, Bhīṣma made a vow that I will personally kill all of the sons of Dhritarashtra. He made that vow. And of course, not like nowadays. Nowadays, a person, they can say all sorts of things in their election campaign, and then they don't do that when they're elected. It doesn't matter. Times change. In fact, people, that's the standard now. Don't expect the chief executive of the state to tell the truth. But 5,000 years ago, Kshatriya Dharma, very strong, very powerful Kshatriya Dharma. And the word, I give you my word. Nowadays, people will say, I give you my word. Oh, who cares? After some time, well, Prabhu, circumstances changed. But in those days, you give the word. So Bhīṣma said that. He made those vows: I will break the thighs of Dushashan, and I will tear off the arms of Dushashan, who touched Draupadi's hair, and Duryodhana break his thighs, split open the chest of Dushashan. I make these vows before the assembly of great kings and princes. And if I am unable to fulfill these vows, then my forefathers will not be able to enter the heavenly abode. So this is Dharma, actually, Manas from Dharma. We think well, parents wouldn't be, forefathers wouldn't be able to enter the heavenly abode. So what? But actually, bhārāśvam dharma, this is the goal. This is why you need putra, why you need a son. Because after your departure, he will do the shraddha ceremony to ensure that you will not have to remain in hell. That's the whole purpose of bhārāśvam dharma. That's why there's Gurukul education. So that the young, they'll be indoctrinated into these Vedic values, social values. They'll be indoctrinated. And still in Bharat Bhumi, even though everything has become degraded so much, still this sentiment is there in the son that I have to look after my father's interest in his next life. So where do you get that value? You have a belief in that, a belief that there is a next life and it's up to me to perform shraddha so that my father will not have to suffer in hell. And therefore this value is indoctrinated, it's indoctrinated in the mind, therefore it's very strong. Because of the childhood, this is social values, this is tradition, kula dharma, bhārāśvam dharma. And Gurukula is meant to indoctrinate the child in those values so that they never would consider neglecting that duty. And this is Varnashram Dharma. So the quality, the values, you give your word. That's very important that you maintain that, and in this case, delivering the forefathers. Of course, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement, it doesn't wait. It doesn't depend upon such piety. Patra bicha nahe, nahe shtan, jai jahapai, taha kore prem dhan. In Mahaprabhu's Dakshin Bharat tour, he's preaching in South India. It is described that, actually, Kaviraj Goswami describes that the mercy that was displayed when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was traveling in South India and distributing the holy name, chanting Haraye Nama. No, he's chanting Krishna, 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 hey. He was wondering. Even the associates wanted to accompany Mahaprabhu. He refused. Nityananda Prabhu explained that I know all the paths of South India. Nityananda Prabhu, Nitai Goshai. And he was 12 years old. He was taken away from his home by the itinerant mendicant, unknown sannyasi. He stayed one night at the house of Ojai Pandit. He stayed one night. And this is the Vedic culture. Anything, when a guest is staying in your home, this is Vedic culture. When a guest is staying in your home, then any requirement they have, you have to fulfill. That is called otiti parayan, that any requirement, whilst they're staying in your home, any requirement you have to fulfill. So then they stayed up all night. Next morning, that sannyasi, he's leaving. Panditji, I have one request. One request. I am traveling from one holy place to another. I need a Brahmin assistant. Because a sannyasi can't cook, can't light fire. I need a Brahmin assistant, a brahmachari to assist me. You give me your son for a few days. I'll take him to the holy places. He will get experience. One night he stays, and the next morning he asks him for his son. And Hadayoja, what could he do? How could he refuse? So Nityananda Prabhu left because it was his arrangement. Otherwise, how else could he leave? It had to be done in such a way that Padavati and Oja Pandit, they had to feel that it was a duty. It was a religious duty. So in that way, they rose to the challenge, and they gave their son. He never came back. A few days he never came back. They never heard of him again. We never heard of that sannyasi again. In 20 years, Nityananda Prabhu was traveling. He traveled all over South India, Nityananda Prabhu. Although he wasn't preaching Krishna consciousness, as he was waiting for the order. Shunu Shunu Nityananda, Shunu Haridash, Shabbatar Amaragai Kodaho Pragash. After 1 year of the nocturnal kirtan in the house of Subhash Thakur, then Shadyanandan, he called Nityananda Prabhu and Haridash Thakur. He called them to begin the systematic propagation. Prati gore gore giye koro e bhikha bolo Krishna bhaja Krishna koro Krishna shikha. The systematic propagation of the Sankirtan movement, as Mahaprabhu was ordered at the time of initiation. Nache gao bhakti shange koro sankirtan Krishna nama upadeshi tara sharvajon. Nache, dance, gao, sing. Bhakti shange koro sankirtan. This is the order Mahaprabhu received from Shalishar Puri. Krishna nama upadeshi, the instructions, the science of chanting Hare Krishna. Krishna nam upadeshi tara sharvajon. You should instruct all people and deliver them. So Mahaprabhu was traveling in South India. Kaviraj Goswami explains that the mercy he displayed in South India was actually more than even what he displayed in Navadip. Dvijamani, Navadip Shiromani, the crest jewel of the Navadip Brahmins, but the Smartas and the scholars and the Pashandis and the Shaktas were not allowed into the kirtan of Srivas Thakur. And one time one Smarta cursed Sachinandan as he was taking bath at the bank of the Ganga, because on the bank of the Ganga, that's where everything happened in Navadip Dham. Navadip Shampoti ke boni bare pare ek Ganga ghate loka loka shnan kore. According to Vrindavan Thakur, who can describe the glories of Navadip Dham? Navadip Shampoti ke boni bare pare. Who can describe ek Ganga ghate, at one ghat? Loka lok shnan kore, 100,000 people were bathing. One ghat. And there were numerous ghats all along the bank of the Ganga. So that's where the action was. Mahaprabhu, his class was on the bank of the Ganga. He defeated Digbijay on the bank of the Ganga. He first met Lokhipriya on the bank of the Ganga. That's where it happens, in Navadip Dham, on the banks of the Ganga, where Sachinandan performs his daily pastimes. Gauda deshe hoy more dui shamasrai janani janobi e dui doyamoy. When he was pleading with Ramananda Roy and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya for permission to go to Vrindavan whilst residing in Jagannath Puri, Mahaprabhu exclaimed that I want to go to Vrindavan via Bengal. Vrindavan, Puri Vrindavan, a Bengal, a different direction. I want to go via Bengal. Gauda deshe hoy more dui shamasrai, because I have two shelters in Gauda Desh. Janani, my mother, Sachimata, Janobhi, and Ma Ganga. E dui doyamoy. These two are very merciful. So on the bank of the Ganga, Mahaprabhu's pastimes are performed. Of course, regarding just on the topic, seeing as that we're discussing the glories of Ma Ganga in this exalted assembly of the Satam, then, and we're also discussing the topic of performing Shraddha, the duty of the son to deliver the son. So is described by Nityananda Prabhu from the lips of Nitai Gosai himself, that regarding Ma Ganga and regarding these karma kanda requirements. Of course, Kaviraj Goswami explains that Shraddha Shabde Bishwash Kohe Shudrida Nishchoy Krishna Bhakti Koile Sharva Karma Krita Hoy. Just by Krishna Bhakti Koile Sharva Karma Krita Hoy. All of the prescribed duties of the Varna and Ashram system are fulfilled just by Krishna Bhakti. Shraddha Shabde Bishwash Kohe. And this should be a firm conviction of the Vaishnav. So Nityananda Prabhu was explaining to Jiva Goswami that Jai John Palgun Punima Diboshe Ganga Shnan Kore Ganga Nagare Te Sri Gauranga Puja Kore Upabash Kore Sahasra Purush Purvagan Shange Sri Goloka Prapti Hoy Jota Tota Mori. He's explaining the glories of taking bath in Magang. Jai John, that person, Jai John means anyone. Jai John. Palgun Punima Diboshe. Falgun Punima, on the full moon day of the Falgun month. Ganga Shnan Kore, who takes bath in Ma Ganga. Ganga Nagarete, here in Mayapur. Gauranga Puja Kore, Upabash Kore, who fasts and worships Gauranga, performs Sankirtan on that day of Falgun Punima Diboshe. Sahasra Purush Purbagon Shonge Sri Goloka Prapti Hoy Jota Tota More. Jota Tota More means in whatever circumstances he leaves his body, Jota Tota More. That person, Jejon, anyone who's fasted, worshipped Gauranga on Gaur Purnima Day and taken the bath in Maganga here in Mayapur, that person, Jota Tota Mori, in whatever circumstances they die, Sahasra Purush Purbagon Shonge, they take along with them 1,000 ancestors, Sri Goloka Prapti Hoy. They attain Goloka with 1,000 ancestors just by bathing in Maganga on Gaur Purnima Day here in Mayapur. Navadip Dham ki, Maganga ki. Yeah. So the words of the Kshatriyas were very. it's Varnashram Dharma. You get to tell the truth. Satyam. It's a principle of Varnashram Dharma. A Kshatriya Dharma. I'll give you my word. My forefathers will not enter the higher realms if I'm not able to fulfill this vow. That was very serious. He would give his life for that. For one who is honored, dishonor is worse than death. Now, the distinction between the Kshatriyas and the Brahmins is that the Kshatriyas, they require public recognition. They require notary, they require the respect in a grand way from the public, and it should be high profile. Without that, the Kshatriya is not inspired. It's important for them. The public image, the respect from the people in general, that's important. The Soryam, Teja, they are powerful, they are determined. Juddhe Chapalayanam, they're courageous in battle. Dhanam Ishwara, they're charitable. Ishwarabhav, they're a leader, they take control. Ishwarabhav, they tell others what to do. They need a profile, a position of authority. That's important for them. The Brahmins, however, Tulla Ninda Shtutir, Yadricha Labashantushto, in Gita, Krishna is explaining that. Yadricha Labashantushto. Whether honor comes or not, they're equipoise, sama. They're not upset if they're not honored. Tulla Ninda Shtuti. Ninda means criticism, Shtuti means glorification. Tulla, they are equal. They're equal. So Bhīṣma is making this vow. It's very public. It's very much everyone knew that definitely he's going to. That's more important. He could not show his face. Having not fulfilled this vow, he could not show his face again in public. It's not that, oh, well, I just said that at that time. You know, things have changed now. We couldn't quite do it, but life goes on. No. There's no nobility there. No nobility. I've given my word. I will die for that. Otherwise, I will be infamy. Well, discredited with infamy. So it is very important for the Kshatriyas. So, having heard that, Dhritarashtra, having heard, he was there in that assembly, having heard that Bhīṣma will kill his 100 sons, he knew that that's a fact. So therefore, when Vyasadeva offered Dhritarashtra this benediction to be able to see everything, that happened on the battlefield, Dhritarashtra refused that benediction, and instead it was bestowed upon. Thus, that benediction fell upon his assistant, Sanjaya, his assistant and secretary. So for that reason, Sanjaya is able to envision the whole discussion of the Gita Upadesh and narrate that to Dhritarashtra. And in that way, through the eyes of Sanjaya, King Akurvata Sanjaya, Samaveta Yuyutsava, Mamika Pandavashchaiva, Kim Akurvata Sanjaya. What did they do having assembled on the battlefield, my sons and the sons of Pandu? Oh Sanjaya. What did they do? King Akurvata. That's the beginning of Gita. And at the end, finally, Sanjaya answers after the 18 chapters have been presented. and dharma sangstarpanataya, for the purpose of adharma, what is that? Adharma shaglanir, when the irreligion is prominent. Adharma shaglanir, dharma sangstarpanataya, for the purpose of re-establishing religious principles. Sri Krishna speaks Gita Upadesh. And then finally Sanjaya responds, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna Yatra Partha Dhanudara Tatra Shri Vijayo Bhuti Druta Nidir Madhir Mama. In my opinion, wherever there is Yogeshwara Krishna and Dhanuda, Arjun, there Sri Vijayo Bhuti Dhruva, certainly there will be victory, opulence and morality. So he finally answers that question. So Mahaprabhu, he was seeking to travel South India, and Nityananda Prabhu, others wanted to accompany him. Kobe Pote Ochetan, what is that? Hobe Oche, yeah. Pote Hobe Ochetan E Shob Shamigrike Kore Rokon. When you fall down on the path unconscious, Nityananda Prabhu is arguing, when you fall down on the path unconscious, Pote Hobe Ochetan, Pore Ochetan, Pote Prema Beshe, Kobe Pore Ochetan, E Shob Shamigrike Kore Rokon. When you fall down on the path unconscious in love of Godhead, E Shob Shamigri, your extra set of cloth, your chanting, your kamandalo, E Shob Shamigri, Ke Kore Rokon, who will look after your possessions? You'll be plundered by the thieves and the rogues on the path. So therefore I should accompany you. And Sachinandan explained that, oh yes, my only possession in this world was my sannyas Nanda. And the first opportunity that you got to put your hand on it, it was broken into 3 pieces. And now I have nothing. So thank you for bringing me to Jagannath Puri, but I will travel the holy places of South India alone. and Mahaprabhu was alone, performing Sankirtan, no Sankirtan party. Jari dekha tari kaha Krishna ubadesh amara gai guru hao tara edesh. These instructions he gave to Kumar Brahman. Kaviraj Goswami explains that he repeated the same instructions to every Brahmin every night. Abhayam, Mahaprabhu wanted to perform the activities of sannyas, the principles of sannyas. Abhayam, Shatra Shangshuddhi, Jnana Yoga Vyavashtiti, 16th chapter. Bhagavad Gita, 16th chapter. Principles of sannyas, abhai, abhai. Abhai means that no concern for eating and sleeping. Even the brahmacharis, at least they're concerned about being at the prasadam hall on time. That much they have to be concerned about. And being on the prasadam, there's a notice downstairs, a Bengali class. Class, including questions, must finish by 8:45. They're concerned, but the sannyasi not even concerned about that. He doesn't even need to go to the prasadam hall. Prasadam will come. He doesn't even need to think about it today, how I will be fed. It will be, Prabhu will send. That is sannyas. No consideration about what I will eat. Given that up, Krishna will provide. I'm only interested in his mission. He will maintain me. And no concern or planning for accommodation. That's sannyas. They're given up interest in these things. It will be provided. Like Mahaprabhu, he was, every day he would go, he'd walk in the morning. He didn't know where he would stay that night. He didn't know what he would eat that day. And his mission was the free distribution of love of Godhead. Patra apatra bichana hey, nahishtan ashtan, jai jaha pai taha kore premdhan. Patra apatra, the pot, it's called patro. In puja you use the pot, patro. And then there's apatro. Apatro is that you'll find in the bathroom. That's apatro. So the bathroom pot you don't use for the puja. There's apatro and patro. Patro means pot. So patra apatra bichanahe. in Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement, no consideration, no discrimination. Patra, apatra, qualified or unqualified. No consideration. Dina hin jota chilo, hariname utharilo, tasha ki jogai maadhai. Dina hin jota chilo. How much you can possibly imagine, how much you can possibly dream of fallen. Dina hin jota chilo. How much you can possibly become fallen. Hariname utharilo. The holy name can deliver you. Dashaki jogai madhai. This is the evidence. Madhai, I always remember, Jagai Madhai. Which one threw the pot? Madhai, mad. Madhai, he threw the pot at Lord Nityananda. And then the Jagai, and then they said, oh, Jagai tried to restrain him. Oh, Jagai tried to restrain him. Okay, he can be delivered. He tried to restrain him second time round. No, he's a sadhu. It will be no benefit for us. Don't beat him again. Jagai said to Madhai. So Mahaprabhu delivered Madhai, Jagai. And Madhai standing there. Are Baba, we two brothers. Everything together. We are always together. You cannot just deliver him. We're inseparable. So this is Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. A free, no consideration of previous pious activity. No consideration, previous pious activity. The Sankirtan mission, as established, it's not a sentiment, it's established on the teachings of Bhagavat, Srinvatam Swakata Krishna Punna Shrabhana Kirtana. As Shukdev Goswami, Sutta Goswami establishes in answering the questions of the sages that Srinvatam Swakata Krishna, hearing about Krishna, Punna Shrabhana Kirtana. Srinvatam Swakata Krishna Punna Shrabhana Kirtana. Just hearing and chanting about Krishna. You're chanting Hare Krishna, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. You get all of the merit of the varnashram system. Punna, you get all of the pious credits just by hearing and chanting. You don't need to accept sannyas. You don't need to perform these things that are there in the varnashram system. They're simply performed to set example for society at large and to help the conditioned Vaishnava, still conditioned by the material energy, behaving in a way which is conducive for his progressive spiritual development and also suitable for his conditioned nature. Maharaj Yudhisthira also conquered this Bharsha, and thus the province was included within the jurisdiction of his empire. Mahārāja Parīkṣit was formally declared to be the emperor of all lands ruled by his grandfather, but still he had to establish his supremacy whilst he was out of his capital to exact a tribute from such states. Ketumāla. This earth planet is divided into 7 deeps by 7 oceans. The central deep, called Jambu Deep, is divided into 9 varshas or parts by 8 huge mountains. Bharatvarsha is one of the above mentioned 9 varshas, and Ketumāla is also described as one of the above varshas. It is said that in Ketumāla Varsha, women are the most beautiful. This Varsha was conquered by Arjuna also. A description of this part of the world is available in the Mahabharata, Shabha 28.6. It is said that this part of the world is situated on the western side of the Meru Parvata, and inhabitants of this province used to live up to 10,000 years. Bhīṣma-parva 631. Human beings living in this part of the globe are of golden color, and the women resemble the angels of heaven. The inhabitants are free from all kinds of disease and grief. Bharatvarsha, this part of the world, is also one of the 9 varshas of Jambu Deep. a description of Bharatvash is given in the Mahabharata, Bhīṣma-parva, chapter 9 and 10. In the center of Jambudvīpa is Ilarvatavash, and south of Ilarvatavash is Harivarsh. The description of these varshas is given in the Mahabharata, Shabha-parva. A couple of verses are quoted there. It's mentioned here that women in both these varshas are beautiful, and some of them are equal to the apsaras, or heavenly women. Kuru, Kuru. According to Vedic Geography, the northernmost portion of Jambudvīpa is called Kuru-bash. It is surrounded by the saltwater ocean from three sides and divided by Shringavan mountain from the Hiranmaya Varsh, Kimpuruṣa-varsh. It is stated to be situated north of the great Himalaya mountain, which is 80,000 miles in length and height, and which covers 16,000 miles in width. These parts of the world were also conquered by Arjuna, as described in the Shabha 28, 1-2, Mahabharata. The king Purushas are the descendants of a daughter of Daksha. King Purusha, actually, it's not clear whether they're a man or not. Therefore, they're called King Purush. Ki Purush as a man or not. Ki Purush, King Purusha. Is it a man or not? The demigods. King Purusha. With different types of mystic cities. The women are so beautiful, like heavenly apsaras. So can you obviously, if the women are so beautiful, the men also must be very heroic and demigod-like, handsome figures. Right? Endowed with all types of mystic powers. The Tapa Loka, planetary system, Brahma Loka, Satya Loka, Jana Loka, Siddha Loka, there, the residents, they have the Asta mystic city, 8 mystic cities. They have these things. They float around lighter than the feather, make themselves smaller than the smaller. They can whatever they desire, they can acquire. It's just common day-to-day life in Tapaloka, mystic cities. Even occasionally you find in this Bhuloka and this Martaloka, you find those who are practicing Jog Siddha in the previous lives. They have these cities. They have these cities. And they became so famous and people think that they're God. So maybe there's such persons as King Purushas taking birth and other types of Devota taking birth on this planet. Because actually, why not? when Gangadas Pandit, when he took Sachinandan for his Vidya Aramba, Ghore Sharva Shastra Bhujya Shamihito Goshti Madde Prabhu Porite Hoilo Chitto. Even though at home, Gauranga, Sri Sachikumar, he knew Sharva Shastra Bhujya. He knew all of the scriptures he learned at home. Jagannath Mishra taught him the Bengali alphabet. It took him a few days to learn all the consonants, and he would write the names of Krishna, Govinda, Murari, Banamali. Nobody even told him those names, but he would write those, and all of the Navadip Basis were enchanted seeing his beautiful handwriting. I believe you can go to Katwa at Ambika Kalna, you can see the handwriting of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu there. So the residents of Nadia were so enchanted seeing him write the Bengali alphabet, ka, ka, ga, ga. Would you like to see Nimai Sachinandan learning Bengali and the Sanskrit grammar? And then Gangadas Pandit, Vyakaran Shastrer Ekanta Tattabit. As much as you can possibly become learned in the Sanskrit grammar, Gangadas Pandit was the most learned scholar in Navadip Dham. And Nimai desired to learn from Gangadas Pandit. So he went, and he was, Gangadhar Pandit seeing Jagadhara Mishra come, he stood, they embraced, he offered him a seat, they sat on the same level, being equals. And then Jagadhara Mishra said, I bought my son. You kindly teach him. You kindly accept him as your student. And go, oh, Amar Bhagyo, such good fortune. I will treat him like my own son. And of course, Nimai became the most brilliant student. Joto Bakko, Gangadhar Pandit Koren, Shukrit Shunile Matro, Thakur Doren. Whatever Gangadhar Pandit said, Joto Bakko, Gangadhar Pandit Koren, whatever he said, Shukrit Shunile Matro, hearing it once, Thakur Doren. Gauranga, he remembered that. Whatever Gangadhar Pandit said, he remembered, hearing it once. So what a student he was. So then when he, after receiving the Upanayan, the Jagya ceremony, Gangadhar Pandit, after beginning the studies, he invited all of his Ishtabandhugan, his dear friends and relatives, to his home. They performed a ceremony. And he awarded the sacred thread, Upanayan, Jagya Shutra, he awarded to Sachinandan. And then, just in the mood of Bhamondev, Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, with a cotton bag on his shoulder and a danda, he begged from door to door in the homes of his eternal servants. And Kaviraj Vrindavan Thakur explains that Parvati, Rudrani, and other wives of great rishis. Parvati is the wife of Lord Shiva. Parvati, Rudrani, the wife of Lord Shiva. Parvati, and Saraswati, the wife of Lord Brahma, and other Devahuti and other wives of great rishis. They appeared in the form of Brahminis, Dijapatnis, wives of Brahmins, in the houses of Navadip, to be able to offer alms when Sachinandan came begging, having taken the Upanayan Jagya Pavitra ceremony. He went begging. And Saraswati and Rudrani and Devahuti, they all assumed the forms of the wives of Brahmins in order to be able to give him alms and put them in his shoulder bag. So under such circumstances, Devota, demigods and demigodesses, they appear to participate in the pastimes of the Lord on this planet. When Mahārāja Yudhisthira performed a horse sacrifice, Jagya, the inhabitants of these countries were also present to take part in the festival. And they paid tributes to the emperor. This part of the world is called kimpuruṣa-ādīni, or sometimes the Himalayan province Himabati. It is said that Sukdev Goswami was born in these Himalayan provinces, and that he came to Bharatvarsa after crossing the Himalayan countries. Well, you can visit the cave of Vyasa in Bhadraśvam. Bhadraśvam. It's the end of Bharat, the end of India, actually. The China border is there, Bhadraśvam. And there's a road you can go, Bhadraśvam, Badri Narayan, where Lord Vishnu is sitting in a four-armed form in yoga posture, lotus posture, meditating. And therefore all of the demigods are also present. Mahadev and all demigods are present in the Himalayas performing tapasya, following the example of Narayan Rishi in Badrinath. Vyasa Muni's cave is there, where he compiled Srimad Bhagavatam. You can visit that cave. And Prabhupada's indicating in this purport that Shukdev Goswami also appeared in the Himalayan province. In other words, Mahārāja Parīkṣit conquered all the world. He conquered all the continents, adjoining all the seas and oceans in all directions, namely the eastern, western, northern and southern parts of the world. Are there any questions? Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, thank you for a nice class. Prabhuji, my query is that we know that Jogpit is the part of the Antardip or Simantadip, and Dhameswar Mahaprabhu, we used to visit there, so it is in the part of the Koladip. So my query is that did Vishnupriya shifted from Antardip, Jogpit to Dhameswar Mahaprabhu? So how it is appeared, because she used to worship.
Such a wonderful question to give us an opportunity to contemplate the Navadip Dham and the pastimes that Mahaprabhu performed here. So I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to do some research on that. But we were explaining, we were discussing, we didn't quite finish that point. We were discussing why, even though at home, Sarva Shastra Bhujiya, he had already understood Shamihito, he had already completely understood all the scriptures at home. Nimai, so learned. But he wanted Goshti Majay Prabhu Porite Hoilo Chitto. He desired to study in Goshti Majay, in the association of others. Why is that? Because he's Dvijamani, he's the Mani, he's the jewel of the Navadip Brahmins. So in order to his glories to be manifest amongst the aristocratic Brahmin Vipra class of Navadip Dham, which is very aristocratic. So therefore he went through the Gurukul system, he became the topmost student, he learned all of these things, grammar, alanka, vyakaran, and he demonstrated his learning. He enjoyed, just like in Brajadam, he's the cowherd boy and he enjoys playing with the calves. Ramchandra, he takes a bow and arrow and he enjoys protecting the pious as a Kshatriya. And Dvijamani, the crest jewel of the Navadip Brahmins, when he appears in the Jagannath Sutta, in the house of Jagannath, as Rishi Putra, as the son of a great Brahmin, then similarly, in order to perform those pastimes, he goes through the appropriate training of a Brahmin. And he learns all of the grammar, alankar, etc., Sanskrit, and he enjoys debating and defeating. And in this way he enjoys bhakti rash with his disciple, with his eternal associates, like from that early time in school. Murari Gupta was his associate, Krishna Ananda. Many of Mahaprabhu's eternal associates were there together playing with him in the childhood pastimes. So in order to reclaim his associates and begin to relish the relationships with them, even though perfectly conversant in all of the academics at home, Sri Sachinandan desired to study in the association of Gangadas Pandit and others. Yes, John Mastami Prabhu.
Prabhuji, my query is that did Vishnupriya shifted from Jogpit to Dhameswar Mahaprabhu? That is my query.
Yeah, I don't know that. We have to skip that question. So.
You were mentioning how Kshatriyas, they need to get public recognition and honor and respect. Now we have devotees like Arjuna and Mahārāja Yudhisthira who are on a pure devotional level. And then we also understand from Chaitanya Charitamrita that the weeds of the weeds to the creeper of bhakti are like puja and pratishta. So I think you maybe understand what my question is. It seems a little bit contradictory. You know, these are such elevated souls, but yet they're still requiring this. Maybe just to set the standard of Vanashram.
The thing is that the followers need that. You know, the followers need that. So that's the system, that's Varnashram system, because the person, they're standing there, they're giving the order. You know, you can't just expect that person to cruise around just like an ordinary person, because then what he says is just like ordinary. So therefore it's Varnashram Dharma, that such respect and public, Arjuna, and Krishna comes at Krishna's Kshatriya, Dwarkadish, his whole chapter 10, it describes his entrance into Dwarka. And because he's the king. It's not actually because he's God. It's because he's Dwarkadish. He's the king of Dwarka, and he's the emperor of Dwarka, of the city. So all of the, for days in advance, so the streets were cleaned. On all of the junctions, there's various auspicious signs, banana plants and full pots and grains and fruit strewn here, and lamps and incense blowing, and all of the residents stopped what they were doing. So this is culture, this is a Vedic reception, and therefore so you develop faith in such a leader, and they have such concern, and so that's there. But for the Brahmins, they don't actually like that. They don't like all the pomp and all of the red tape and all of the they don't like that. They're quite happy just to they don't require that. So excuse me, so it's required for the social functioning that such honor is offered. That we preach in Bangladesh, and someone has to be honored. Someone has to be chief guest, Pradhana Titi, chief guest, and it all has to be there. You have to, whoever you can find, someone has to accept that role of the chief guest. As otherwise the function is not complete. So as public figures, that's the role of the Kshatriyas. Of course, we have our sannyasis also in ISKCON and in the Gaudiya Saraswati family. Sannyas also means a public figure. Sannyas also means a public figure which accepts great public respect. So that's also required for organizing the preaching movement, for organizing and leading the renunciates. But of course, those who are receiving, then of course they're simply receiving out of a sense of duty, and But that's the Western idea that no, let's just remove. No one's qualified, so let's just remove. Everyone's equal. When I was at school, we were the teacher. We were calling them by first name. It was a standard thing. They didn't want you to call them sir or madam. That was in the 70s. You call them by the first name. Why? Because they don't want to have any public respect, because then there's no obligation for them to actually act according to the standard that you expect. We don't want any respect. We don't want we don't want to show public respect. So therefore, we're not accountable. We can perform degraded activities, and it doesn't matter because you're not respecting us like a respectable person anyway. This is in Western culture, no respect. Everyone, it's all equal. So therefore, we don't have to behave like a gentleman. We don't have to behave first class. But no, that respect is given, and it induces those who are in the position of being respected. They have a lot of accountability to behave according to the standard, because a lot of people are depending upon them.
There's one conversation that took place, actually Giriraj Swami told of this pastime, where one disciple asked Srila Prabhupada, and he's referencing in the Nectar of Devotion how one shouldn't accept worship in front of the deities. So then the disciple said to Srila Prabhupada, but Srila Prabhupada, every day you're accepting Guru Puja. And then Prabhupada he said, yes, it's more important that my disciples develop their love for Krishna than some tiny rule and regulation. And it was, I think, probably in the context, because even in India at that time, practically all of his disciples were Westerners dancing white elephants. To set the standard, this is like one of the most prominent aspects of the morning program is the Guru Puja, so the devotees would understand. Yes, I've got to have full respect for my spiritual master.
Yeah, it's so important in our movement. Yeah. The daily Guru Puja to Srila Prabhupada now is so important. In the future, it will become even more important.
Yeah.
Because now, at least, we have our leaders. They're all Prabhupada's disciples. Our leadership, and therefore, Prabhupada's presence is very much, you just stick to your leader, your guru, because Prabhupada's presence is very prevalent there. But in the future, our leaders won't have that. We won't have that luxury that our gurus are all the direct disciples of Srila Prabhupada. We won't have that luxury in the future. Mataji.
And also qualities of a Kshatriya. I think we can add one more quality, is resourceful, and detachment. We have seen examples of many kings when they leave their kingdom at a moment's notice. So that's one of the very wonderful quality of Kshatriya. Another point I wanted to make was Hanuman comes from Kimpurna-varsha, and also that the residents are considered to have strength of lions. So sometimes either they have a face of a lion or a big hairy face. Anyway, I'm learning this a lot from Praneshwar Prabhu from, I believe he's in Juhu or Chopati, I'm not quite sure. He's done amazing series on Vedic cosmos. Everybody should see that. So this verse particularly goes into so many details of the Varshas. So thank you very much.
Mataji, you've shared with us some important points and some good instructions. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.